Hi everyone. Before we get going, a word from this week's sponsor, Orbit MI. Nude reports don't have to be a hassle. Orbit MI's Orbit Reporter is lightweight, browser-based, and works on any shipboard device. Built-in validations catch mistakes before they happen, and offline capability means you can file reports even without the internet. Plus, you can customize reports to your company's exact needs. Stop struggling with reporting and start getting compliance right every time. Orbit Reporter. Accuracy, simplicity, and reliability from Orbit MI. Learn more at orbitmi.com/connected-maritime-era. And now, onto the podcast. Welcome, everyone. You are listening to The Last Dinosaur, and I'm your host, Chris Aversano. This is the podcast where we explore the evolving maritime landscape and hear from the innovators leading the charge. This episode is part of our ongoing partnership with the Captain's Table Challenge, a global pitch competition that champions forward-thinking solutions across maritime sustainability, digitalization, and impact. I'm thrilled to say that for the second year in a row, The Last Dinosaur is the official podcast of the Captain's Table, and we're excited to highlight the people shaping the future of shipping. Today's guest is Tabitha Logan, Director of Projects at Cetus Maritime and co-founder of the Captain's Table. At Cetus Maritime, Tabitha leads a wide range of strategic initiatives from sale and purchase and mergers and acquisition transactions to branding, marketing, digitalization strategy, ESG reporting, and sustainability projects. Beyond her corporate role, Tabitha helped co-found the Captain's Table as a way to bring startups and the maritime industry closer together, building a platform where innovation meets opportunity. Tabitha, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you also for really coming on the podcast and wearing kind of two hats, which I think is going to be great to explore with you. Obviously, the first hat in a super important role at Cetus Maritime. We'll get into that. But then, of course, your role of being a co-founder of the Captain's Table Challenge, and can't wait to dive into that. But first, let's talk a little bit about, your role as where you are. As I like to joke around with people when they ask me, is podcasting full time? I said, no, I have something that pays the bills. Talk about what pays the bills as Director of Project at Cetus Maritime.
Yeah, I know that well. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I just recently celebrated a bit of a milestone birthday. Not sure I'm going to mention which one on the podcast, but it certainly gives you pause for reflection when you hit those milestones. And I was thinking about what I've achieved over my career in shipping and actually thinking about how lucky I am because it has been such a varied career. And part of that has been down to having great mentors and great bosses who've pushed me along my journey. I started in the shipping industry in maritime law, but I quickly realized that I was not really cut out to be a lawyer. That wasn't the area that interested me, but I very quickly fallen in love with the maritime industry after working with some very exciting and interesting characters at the law firm. So I moved across to shipowners, and I've actually pretty much been with the shipowners ever since. But in my time in the shipping industry, I've been lucky enough to work across a number of different verticals. I've worked in operations, I've worked in commercial, doing chartering, I've worked in the technical department. So I think I'm really lucky that I have a good understanding of the business that is shipping. In my current role at Cetus Maritime, where I head up the projects team, as you alluded to earlier, I wear lots of different hats there. But I think the key areas that I'm focusing on with the company are obviously executing our growth strategy. So that involves whether it's mergers and acquisitions. We've in the last couple of years merged with other similar medium-sized ship owners. A sale and purchase, where we've been renewing our fleet over the last 3 years. But I also wear the hat of digitalization. So we've been on our own journey of digitalization in the last 3 years, and also sustainability. But instead of wrapping all those three areas around, the main thing is ensuring that what we're doing as a company when we're growing aligns with our sort of vision and mission as a company. And I think, when I look at my role and sort of how it ties in with the shipping industry, I think in summary, I would say that I'm hopefully putting Cetus in a position where we have the right people in the company, where we have the right assets in the company, where we have the right systems in the company and the right governance structure to ensure that really the company is sustainable and competitive and profitable for the next 10 to 15 years.
And I think, you're covering several of the hot button issues, not only just in our industry, but in industry as a whole, really focusing a little bit on the sustainability and digital parts. I mean, and that certainly the digital part, but as a tangent, the sustainable part gets into the crux of the tongue-in-cheek name of this podcast, The Last Dinosaur. Talk about some of the challenges, especially coming from the ship owning side, that when you're dealing with this, whether it's looking at digital platforms to help vetting and safety or chartering, or initiatives that are going to have a lot of upfront capital costs, but then a long-term focus, on the growth in terms of sustainability. Focus on the growth because I think companies are going to have to grow. They're going to have to be sustainable. I'm really curious to hear what, kind of how you've dealt with some of those challenges and maybe even a couple of the successes that you've had.
Sure. Yeah, I think you're right. You hit the nail on the head. We are facing a lot of challenges and headwinds in the shipping industry. And there certainly is a challenge both with the sustainability side and the digital side, that a lot of these projects involve high upfront costs. And there still is quite a lot of uncertainty around the return on investment for these projects. And I think that's something that we grapple with as a company, very often. And I think if you take some projects, for example, if you look at retrofitting, of which we've obviously been retrofitting energy-saving devices on some of our fleet, there's a big CapEx cost involved for this. There's time out of the water for the ship. There's, time out of the water is obviously time where you're not making money. It involves a lot of training for the crew on board. So these are all challenges that you have to contend with. And if you look at some of the more digital tools, obviously there's still a cost outlay, but for us, the challenges center around training. Do we have the right people that are capable of using these digital tools? There's a lot of infrastructure change as well when you're looking at digitalization projects. And for us as well, it's opened up new conversations around cyber risk and cybersecurity. So it is, there are lots of challenges that we're contending with. And I think one of the issues I have is I think there's a lot of focus on the bigger companies with very deep pockets that are sort of ordering methanol fleets. But the majority, well, primarily in dry bulk, of ship owners are small to medium-sized ship owners, and they have financial constraints. They don't necessarily have these big R&D teams or, IT sort of teams that can look at these digital products. And then you couple that with all the regulatory uncertainty that we have, it's all these regulations coming in are quite fragmented. So I completely understand the hesitancy around making some of these big decisions and being the first mover. In terms of projects that we've done, which I'll come on to in a second, I'd say one of the other challenges that we face is obviously resistance from people. There is a lot of resistance to change in the shipping industry. I do think it is improving a little bit, but, people have been doing something a certain way for many years, and then suddenly you're introducing a whole stream of different solutions. So I think for us, the success in some of the projects has been because we've had leadership buy-in. It has to be, for me, a top-down approach that comes down, filters down to the company that this ties into our vision and mission. We all want to be here in 10 to 15 years' time, and, this is why we're doing this. So I think for us as well, what was a success factor is we started small. We looked at small digital projects and small sort of energy-saving device projects because we wanted to demonstrate value to the staff and to the team quite early on. So if you execute a small project that makes a big difference to the team early on, then I think you also get more buy-in from the people. So, for example, we started very early on after we merged with some of these other shipping companies to look at our communication systems, and we moved away from Microsoft Outlook to a platform called ShipFix. And when we moved onto that platform, you thought, okay, it's just an email system. Got the feedback from the staff that we were saving them sort of 2 to 3 hours a day. It's a more transparent and collaborative communication system, but we were saving them 2 to 3 hours a day of going through their inbox. So they were thrilled, right? They don't want to be spending time reading all these emails. They want to be making money.
You may be noticing, although we don't do a video, I'm smiling a little bit. Of course, ShipFix. I worked at Vesson, which purchased ShipFix.
Yeah, okay.
So, I'm going to leave this part in. I'll send them the bill for this free advertising.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. And I think it goes back, when I hear all of this, I was involved in the early days, believe it or not, ISO, ISM.
Mm.
Okay. And what is actually the same as this is that this is not about an ISM policy or about digital policy or about retrofitting ships or about using ShipFix. This is a change management issue. And it's the same It's the same theme, same verse, different theme, however you want to say that. It's the same thing. And this comes down to change management, certainly with people who have an internal kind of SME position of power. Well, I've always done it this way. We've never had an incident. You've, profited on the ship, and now you want me to do something different. I think that's really one of the biggest things that I've observed in talking to people in my own career. And I also reflect a little bit on top down. You could definitely got to have the top down. In my last role at Vesson, I was rolling out something. It had all the support from top down. It had a few champions internally, which you always need. But then it turned out the project was scuttled a little bit because I was competing with and I wasn't able to get over that hurdle with some of the company, some of the people in the company. But it's just a matter of sometimes, I agree top down, but then I think you got to have that champion internally who could really kind of say, hey, look, it's not as bad as you think it is.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. And some of the ways we've kind of navigated that is I find with a lot of projects, it's discussed at management level and then suddenly parachuted onto the team. Hey, look, this is it. We've got you a fancy new tool. There's been no consultation in the process. And I think what management at the top don't realize is how disruptive these projects are to the day-to-day work of your employees, right? You're asking them to take time away for training, learn new systems. There's lots of sort of data transfer issues and all the rest of it. So what we did early on is engage 1 to 2 members of staff from each team. So like the commercial team, the operations team, the technical team, or the finance team, whoever's involved in this. And we say, look, this is the problem we've identified. These are the solutions we've identified. We think this is the right one for you, but you guys sit in on the demos. You make sure that you also agree. And then we sat with them and we discussed, right, okay, what is the timeline for this? We told them, we set the expectations around the disruption. For the finance team, you don't want to be parachuting something in at audit time, when they're completely swamped. So,
or closing a book or year-end closing.
Or it's, the busiest time of the year for for chartering. They don't really want to be distracted. So I totally agree. But for us, it's been the projects that have, as we've gone along, because we've done a few of these now, that have been where we've put together a task force, which has involved leadership, but also the team, and given, empowered them. We have also, for certain projects, linked it very much to KPIs as well to sort of set the expectations that, also from our side, well, as from a company's perspective, hey, look, we're investing a lot of money in the system to improve the company and improve your jobs and help you with efficiencies. Therefore, we do expect you to use it. A company doesn't want to invest, $500,000 or $250,000 in a new system to find that the staff are still, carrying on with Excel. So we also set the expectations as well that if we're investing in this and we're investing in you, we expect you to also come to the table and use these systems properly as well.
I think that's absolutely one of the most important things. And I appreciated some of the feedback that I got on my prior role with folks, and it can't do this, it can't do that. They wanted this customizable thing. And I think the company ended up just building their own platform. Even comparatively, what we were kind of negotiated the rate for them, building a platform, as internally can be very expensive, time consuming. And then everybody forgets about the maintenance at the end, right? Forgets that ongoing cost. It's not just the upfront cost. Pivoting a little bit, we talked a little bit about the kind of sustainability and emissions focused projects. Definitely a double-edged sword in the sense of, a lot of, especially for retrofits, or if you're looking at things like wind assist or other types of things, a lot of upfront costs. Putting aside the regulatory piece for a second, it does have a positive energy savings. If I look at just wind assist, there's got to be a half a dozen different companies right now, at least, probably all feature a couple different things. Retrofitting may be the same, certainly coding, there's a few. Talk a little bit about kind of your process about working with those different avenues of reducing emissions and making the sell internally that, we need to do this for regulatory, but it could also make common sense income impact for the positive.
Yeah. Okay. That's definitely a journey we've been on in the past couple of years. I think taking a step back, we are a handy size dry bulk ship owner. So realistically, that does rule us out of some of the larger, more sophisticated technologies. I would say we have done, studies into them, looking at wind assist and carbon capture and other things, but quite honestly, with space, capex investment, all the rest of it, we can't make a good case for it. So we have obviously installed energy saving devices, rudder bulbs, we've done propeller modification, silicone paint on the hull. We have obviously installed a number of energy saving devices over the past couple of years, which we've looked at. They're fairly standard to the industry, and there is a lot more research and sort of statistics around these energy saving devices. For us, a lot of it was talking to the different suppliers, but also talking to other ship owners and getting their feedback as well. I think there's a lot more of a sense of collaboration around ship owners now, that they're willing to share with each other their experiences in terms of using these devices as well. So I know our technical team spends a lot of time on this, and it is very hard to actually quantify the savings, because oftentimes you go to a dry dock and you're maybe installing 4 or 5 different technologies and your silicon paint plus your docking, and then it comes out of the water, and then you're looking at the performance over the next 12 months. How do you identify which of those different, or isolate which of those different devices is actually saving your money?
Because you don't want to do it one at a time, because you don't want the cost
it doesn't make sense.
4 dry docks to do,
Yeah. So I think we're just coming up to our second year of full data for some of the energy saving devices that we're installing. And it is clear there is a fuel reduction, which is obviously positive for a ship owner, because fuel cost is a huge proportion of our business. But I'd say that with some of them, they're not maybe as high as we thought. Everything ranges, I would say, between 3 to 5%. We have seen probably the most savings from silicon paint on our hulls. We estimate between 8 to 10% in fuel savings from some of the silicon paints and coatings that we're using at the moment, which are fairly new to the market. So obviously that is something we can take back to the board and to our management and say, okay, these are sort of concrete examples we can give of where we're saving money. But on some of the other measures we're taking, we're still sort of at the early stages. We're looking at some optimization solutions, potentially digital twins, and using AI. We now have installed some sort of sensors onto our ships as well, but we're probably at the earlier stages of that. But I do think it is hard, when you're looking at sort of compliance and then the value of installing these equipments onto your ship, really how to quantify it. But I think there's also been other ways that it's benefited our company. For example, we're just about to close our first sustainability linked financing facility, which is off the back of some of our ESG initiatives. So that's obviously something that we can demonstrate to management and the board, that this is off the back of those initiatives as well. And I think, for our stakeholders, they have confidence that we're investing into our fleet, and we're trying to, actually hate this word, future-proof. So we're also trying to future-proof our fleet as well. And I think some of the other benefits we've seen from our sustainability initiatives, which was actually quite interesting for me. I was doing the report for 2024. And I saw that actually our crew retention levels had gone up consecutively year on year. So we're now at over, I think we're 92% on crew retention. And when we were surveying our crew, a lot of it was around some of, that they're sailing on a more modern eco fleet. We're installing Starlink satellites, so they've got better connectivity. But also seeing some of our sustainability initiatives, which are communicated to them, they had better, improved morale, and they were proud to be part of the company. So, I think with a lot of these things, you're trying to identify a dollar value, which is, can be challenging in itself. But I think there are also other sort of more intangible benefits that come from these investments as well.
Pivoting a little bit, you talk about future proof, and I'm going to, throw this one at you. A lot of discussion about changing fuels, whether it's LNG, ammonia. And you brought up something interesting about a lot of the focus on the larger ship owners, right? And I think especially when it gets into the alternative fuels, the larger ship owners that are on a liner service and coming from the similar background on the wet side, dry bulk are what's called a tramp trade. You never know where you're going to go, especially when you get down to the smaller size ships. You're dealing with the handy ships. I always use the example local here to New Haven, right? If you ever drive by 95 in New Haven, you see typically there's a ship loading scrap metal. You don't know where that ship's going to be in 6 months. It could be back here. It could be on the other side of the world, someplace in Southeast Asia. You just don't know. And I think that makes it harder for a large part of the industry, especially as described as the long tail of the industry, with a lot of ship owners, a lot of different ship types that have to kind of deal with these regulations, whereas a lot of the oxygen in terms of what's getting done, what's intended getting done, goes to the bigger folks. Talk a little bit about your thinking on fuel strategy. Sure. How does a smaller ship owner with all due respect in terms of against the bigger size folks, whether it's in your space or not, how do you guys kind of have to take this approach? Because you have to deal with it, but you have to deal with it very differently than, let's say, I'm going to pick up Maersk, right? Oh, yeah, well, we go to the same ports all the time and we can schedule that because I know where their ships are going to be over the next 6 to 9 months.
Yeah. I think so. Our experience with, I guess, alternative fuels, it extends at the moment to biofuels at the moment. So maybe I'll use that as a case study. We decided in 2023 that we would start testing biofuels on our ships as a means for compliance, especially with the EU regulations coming into force, such as EU ETS and Fuel EU. And we thought, okay, this is, an interesting space. So we tested quite early on the different grades of biofuels. But even back in 2023, there was a couple of ports where you could actually, obtain biofuel for a ship. It was mainly in the Arctic region in Europe. There certainly wasn't biofuel in Hong Kong, which there is now, and Singapore wasn't online. So yeah, I think with a lot of these alternative fuels, there is a lot of concern around the actual infrastructure and the bunkering facilities. And you're right, we're a tramper. We operate our ships. We're not sort of time charter out, period charter out. We are operating these ships ourselves. And exactly as you said, we don't know where we're going, one voyage to the next for some of them. So it is hard for us to plan, but at the same time, we recognize that we have sustainability targets that we want to meet. We do want to do our part in reducing emissions. So I think that's been successful for us. And we have had, obviously, conversations around alternative fuels, such as methanol and ammonia. But take, for example, methanol. I don't have the figures exactly to hand, but when we looked at the cost for retrofitting one of our ships to a methanol engine, it was well over $1 million. Now, how do you make that case for sort of, again, a medium-sized ship owner to be able to say, let's spend that money on the ship and retrofit, especially if you're looking at maybe a 9 or 10-year-old ship? And nowadays, 15 years is even old for a ship with the changing regulations. So, can you make your return on investment in 5 years? No, it doesn't make sense. So that's not. And then similarly, there are companies going out there and ordering methanol carriers. But again, we're not in a position to be able to do this. We don't have, the capital to go out and order a fleet of, 5 or 6 methanol ships or ammonia ships. So it is a challenge. And I think for us, look, if I look at big picture, if I take myself away from being a ship owner, I'm fairly confident about the supply side. In Hong Kong, we're very close to China. And if you see what's going on in China around methanol production, there's a huge amount of supply there. And I know that charterers and ship owners are visiting and trying to sort of almost lock in future supply. But I think the problem is the ports, and the infrastructure around that, how quickly that can catch up, how quickly the bunker suppliers can come online. And again, which fuel, are you going to become an ammonia supplier? Are you going to become a methanol supplier? Right. Everyone's sort of banking on different fuels. So It is a challenge. It is something that we definitely are thinking about. But right now, I'd say we're probably in the wait and see mode, as in, what our plan has to be for the future fleet. Right now, we are doing as much as we can around energy saving devices, and we are utilizing biofuel. But I still think we're a little way away from, deciding if we're going to be using methanol in the future, ammonia. But we're certainly studying it very closely, having conversations with the shipyards around what type of ships they're building, dual fuel engines. So yeah, it's interesting, but I don't think we're quite ready to kind of put our hat in the ring for which one we're going to go for.
I think it's interesting in the sense of, you're going to have to kind of play it out a little bit. And I think the other opportunity that could be there is more of this collaboration with other ship owners. Maybe there's somebody who took a leap because they got special financing, or they had an arm that was able to help them out and say, hey, we're going to give this a shot here. And this is how it works. And then, obviously you could have that collaboration, not necessarily for detailed analysis, but certainly like, hey, we did this. It worked pretty well. It was actually a little bit lower than the cost that we thought using Shipyard ABC for the retrofit. And I think there is more of that opportunity. I remember hearing about collaboration about 7 or 8 years ago when I was in a conference, and some of my friends on the chartering desk, no way. And I think that, when you talk about collaboration, sometimes people get focus on like the chartering and operate. No, it can be done at different levels where nobody gets in trouble. You're just kind of sharing general guidance, especially given the kind of the way the IMO is going, despite other types of, let's say, resistance in certain parts of the world. I think it's going to be that's going to be a key part of it. Again, along many other ways of making improvements. I want to pivot a little bit. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if you look at some of the liner orders that are out there, a lot of them are backed by long-term time charters, right? And,
right.
They want to secure, liner ships, and so they have these partnerships. But again, it goes back to the challenge of dry bulk. These fuels are going to be more expensive. Who's going to pay? I mean, even in terms of biofuel, talking to charterers saying, hey, look, we can find a way to reduce your emissions. There's not many willing to kind of say, yeah, let's get on board, let's share the cost, right? So at the end of the day, does all the cost sit with the ship owner? You need to be able to share this along the supply chain to some degree.
I think that's always been one of the biggest, certainly contentious points, even going back to fixing on world scale. And you look at fixing on world scale, and if you don't know what that is, look it up. Everything is fixed, but everything is fixed. The price of fuel is fixed a year in arrears. At least that's how it was done. So in 2008, 2009, when we had this significant change in price, they literally had to republish the book based on the new fuel prices. So because the ship owners became lopsided based on kind of the way the calculation was done. We could have a whole podcast about that. Yeah. And that's a part of, I'll leave that in history. Switching gears a little bit, wearing your other hat, captain's table, a lot of success from what I could tell, a lot of great, not only just what you do at the captain's table, but certainly the challenge. Talk a little bit about your impetus, why you and Suyin founded it, and why, and what were you looking to, what gaps were in the industry were you looking to kind of fill? Because I think that's important to take a look at that.
Yeah. So I guess it came fairly naturally. A little bit of backstory. We also ran, we still do for 15 years, an organization for young professionals in the maritime industry, which was based in Hong Kong, but also covered China and various markets in Asia. And that was all about encouraging more young professionals to join the shipping industry. This was when we were having a bit of a talent drought. And over the years, through that and through the various events that we ran and our network, we basically built up an incredible network of over 1,000 members. And we started to get to know all the ship owners and the decision makers, the C-suite. And about 6 years ago, we started to notice that we were getting approached more and more by startups. And they were reaching out to us and saying, hey, we have a really interesting product. We're looking to come to Hong Kong and to Asia, but really we don't know where to start. Like, who do we contact? How do we contact them? How do we break into this market? And so we started off just trying to help them out, make, general introductions as we do. And then I was sitting with Suyin over lunch one day and I said, maybe there's something in this. We know the industry is facing a whole heap of problems right now. It was a lot of talk around decarbonization, but even going back to basics, just basic digitization and all these different areas. So we said, we know the shipping companies, the industries facing problems. And then we are also getting approached by startups who are having these solutions. How do we bring them together? And I said, what about doing something like Shark's Tank or Dragon's Den for the shipping industry? And that's sort of where the genesis for the Captain's Table came up. And in essence, we are a pitch competition for startups. But over the years, it's become much more than that. It really is a platform for collaboration. So what we can do with our network is we can bring all the decision makers into the room, and then we can bring all the startups into the room, and we can say, right, shipping industry, here you are on stage, you've got a bunch of solutions. What do you think? Give them feedback, because really what a lot of the ones we were talking to were looking for was feedback. Is this product good for you? Is it going to work for you? Would you use this? Please give me feedback. Help me refine it. And the industry really took to that, and they really have backed us solidly for 6 years. We started as a nonprofit, it's fully funded by the industry, and we wanted it to really be a collaboration. So each year we do roundtables with the industry, we sit with them, we say, what are the problems? What are the headaches you're facing? What are you looking for? So that when we go out to market and we're looking and talking to startups, we know that we're bringing them something that they actually want. And it's been a fantastic success. We're now into our 6th year of the competition. We've survived COVID. We've survived various other excitements. But it's something that we're very proud of. in our achievement.
Well, I think you should be proud of it, and I am thrilled to be part of kind of getting the word out. I know that when I spoke to Sugan, we talked about it is very Asia focused, and she said, how do we get more from the West? How do we get, with all the activity going on in Europe, Israel, of course, United States, how do we get some of those folks focused on what you're doing again, because you do have this, because shipping is global in nature, right? A ship owner who happens to go to this, who sits in Singapore or Hong Kong, their ships generally don't stay in one spot, and they want to be able to take a little bit of everything. I'd like to ask you this. So 6 years in, or 5 competitions, this is the 6th year, if I'm understanding this. What themes or solutions, without embarrassing anybody either way, kind of stood out to you? Like where you go like, wow, that was really interesting. And then what stood out to you and you go, oh, that didn't resonate as well as I thought. And let me share that experience, because I've had a lot of guests where I go, this is a great guest. This is going to be awesome. Recorded great. And then I look at the numbers, they're like, what's going on here? And then I have other guests like, okay, that was good, And then I look at the numbers and they go bonkers the other way. They go up. Did you have that type of experience? Did you have that type of experience where, firstly, what are the general themes of success? And I think you mentioned making sure that you're tuned in. But what is the general theme of success? And then what kind of maybe surprised you one way or the other? In general, I don't want to embarrass anybody.
Yeah, no. It's so interesting, right? Because we cover everything. We do hardware solutions, software solutions, IoT, AI. And you do get sort of emotionally invested in these companies right along the way, and in terms of their journey and putting them on stage. It's like seeing your children perform in a show, right? So you're always very emotional about it. I think the ones that have succeeded have very honestly been the ones that demonstrate value early on. So being able to show a shipping company very early on how their product or solution can either save them money or time, whether that's through data or demonstration. I think, that's definitely been a key success factor. I think in terms of solutions that, have done well, I'd say obviously, I think a lot of the crew and social well-being ones, I'm really pleased with that, honestly, because I think it sort of restores your faith that not everyone's just focusing on decarbonization, but they are also focusing on the people as well. So if you take, for example, last year, Sci-Fi won, which was a UK startup with their product CQ, which was a behavioral data collection tool, which was focusing on seafarer well-being and safety. And that was, a unanimous winner among the judges. And that was great, because the previous years had been very dominated by decarbonization. So that was a great success story. But she also was fantastic on stage in terms of her presence, in terms of her presentation. And that is a huge part of it as well. I think the startups that have struggled, it actually is oftentimes because they're almost too invested in their product. They think, I've created the best thing in the world, and they're not necessarily the best salespeople on stage. They've developed this amazing thing, but actually they can't communicate it. And that's why having the right people in your team is so important. It doesn't have to be you, the founder, that pitches on stage. It has to be the person that sells that product the best. So we've had products which we think are fantastic, but then the founder gets on stage because they want to pitch, and then you're going, it's just not coming across, right? They've not been able to articulate it. So, and those that don't take feedback as well. We're here to help. So I think those ones that have not necessarily listened to it. You don't have to take every suggestion we say, but we've been doing this a while. We know what works. So those ones tend to not do as well on stage, I think. I think also one that really stands out was, I'm trying to remember. I think it was 2023 where we had actually a Hong Kong startup win. And this came completely left field for us. It wasn't a traditional commercial shipping solution. Clear Robotics, and they were building electric autonomous ships for cleaning riverways and cleaning the harbors and cleaning the sea. And we were very surprised. That was the people's choice and also the judges' choice. So that also was great, because it also, again, restored our faith that, people are interested in the environment and sustainability.
Yeah, they just don't want, Uber for dogs because it could make a bunch of money, right? That's what I joke around with. Yeah, exactly. No, that's wild. That's pretty cool.
I'm remembering one American startup we had last year as well, Fleet Robotics. And what's really interesting about this is he didn't actually come from the shipping industry. And you'd be surprised at how many startups don't actually come necessarily from a shipping background. So that was really interesting. And he came with his hull cleaning. It was sort of a robot that would go around the hull to measure the thickness and obviously check for hull cleaning. But when he came to Hong Kong, he was blown away because we did our speed dating get together, which is the day before, where they all meet the judges and the sponsors and everyone meet the startups. And everyone was so excited. They were like, oh, this could be used for drug smuggling, and this could be used for hull cleaning, and this could be used for surveying. And he was writing notes frantically because he was being given by the industry all these other use cases for his product. And that was really fantastic to see, because I don't think he thought of half of them, but he was kind of like, oh yes, we can do that for you. We can do that for you. So that was great.
Yeah, I think it's interesting getting to the mix of startups is I've seen, you don't want startups or any company really to be 100% maritime people, because I think we think in our box, like you
Absolutely.
said. And I think the other problem is if you have like the aforementioned, we have a startup and we have all the right people with, Ivy League education and we could do this. We know what we're doing. Okay, good luck. Because I think one of the things that the biggest value that I think, besides the feedback that you and this event provide, is relationships, is networking. Because I think that no matter how good the product is, if you don't have that hook into a couple of people, like even just, hey, I'll pick up the phone. I know the managing director over there and she's a great person. Yeah, I'll make that call for you, just to have that phone call and let the person either sink or swim on their own. I think that that's one of the big things, especially more so in our industry, right? I think your example of this robotics company, yeah, the guy is probably super smart, probably great engineer, but never worked a day on ships or never fixed a ship or never got, hung up on a telephone call from the charterer because, don't bother me, kid. I mean, all these sort of things really kind of, I think, are needed in terms of when companies are looking at startup, to start up and to really solve a problem. So you had a successful past 5 years. This is year number 6. What are we looking for in the next 5 years? And what are you excited about on the captain's table? How are you looking? And what are you excited about? The growth, about, maybe next steps? Do you have something planned, like kind of cool? Are you going to do a captain's table part 2? I know you had stuff you're doing some stuff in a couple of weeks at London International Shipping Week. So are you looking to kind of continue to expand out? What's the next few years? If we have this interview in 2030, what would the type of things that you would like to say that you've accomplished in the last 5 years?
I mean, I think Sue and I always say, and the team, we just want to be the go-to platform for maritime innovation. That's definitely kind of our vision and our mission. But apart from that, we obviously want to expand on our offerings. And, a lot of that is around building up our ecosystem. So we always talk, every sort of captain's table we do, we survey the startups, what did you get out of this? What can we do better at? And what you said previously is actually number one. The reason why they enter our sort of competition, the reason why they think that we're better than other competitions out there, is on the basis of our network. We can introduce them to anyone in any shipping company and get them at least 5 minutes of their time. So that's something that we definitely want to expand on, build our network. Obviously Asia is our area where we're stronger, but we're also looking at regional events. So one of the things we started in the past couple of years is more regional offerings. We still want Hong Kong to be the main event, but we've done events in Hamburg and we've done Posidonia. This year we're doing London and Dubai. But the idea being, for example, in London, one of the winners of the regional heat in London will be flown to Hong Kong for the finals. So trying to sort of build, so the idea being that we have these smaller regional heat rounds, which builds up the network in those places. And when then we bring the startups, because I mean, if I look at the statistics, we've, had hundreds of startups enter, but a lot of them are from Europe, America, and the West, because they really either have already, maybe got some presence in Europe, but they see Asia as a really important emerging market. And in Asia, there's a lot of less traditional shipping markets. I'd say Hong Kong is still quite traditional, but, if you look at Vietnam and you look at Southeast Asia, they're young, they're dynamic, they're much more agile shipping companies, they're more willing to adopt new technologies. So in many respects, that's a great market. And then I think, we obviously want to educate. We're trying to be ahead of the game in terms of what solutions these shipping companies are looking for. And our idea is really to help the maritime industry to remain competitive and remain sustainable. And, we hope to do that through the Captain's Table. This year we've launched Kai Community, which is our alumni platform, and also Kai Lab, which is our corporate offering where we work more closely one-on-one with corporates to help them solve a specific problem. So if they've got one specific problem they want to solve, then we'll work with them and we'll work with the startups to try and do that. So yeah, we're very busy, and we certainly have grand ambitions, but we also don't want to, lose our, secret sauce, which is that we're about collaboration. We're about supporting the industry. We're about making the industry better and sort of secure for the future, because I feel very lucky. I love the job I do and I love the industry I work in. So we want to give back.
Well, I think you're doing that in a fantastic way. And 5 years from now, maybe we'll be talking about the next 5 years. As I wrap up, I love to. As I wrap up, I love to ask this question. Obviously wearing your hat, as I tell people, the full-time paying the bills hat, and then the not paying the bills hat on doing the Captain's Table. What are you throwing in your bag when you anything interesting? It could be, it doesn't have to be like, well, I'm reading right now, Measure What Matters. It doesn't have to be something like that. It could be like, oh, I'm reading a murder mystery novel. I'm reading.
Yeah, that's definitely more my bag.
I read a lot of Star Wars expanded universe stuff because I'm a nerd. I'm a nerd for two things: ships and Star Wars, and then the rest is just leave me alone. So what are you reading these days?
Well, I'm the same as you. I quite like to sort of switch off at the end of a busy day. So I actually had to write the author down to make sure I didn't get it wrong. But the latest book I just finished was Butter by Ahsoka Yuzuki, and that was great. That was a Japanese novel which I read, which was about a lady that murdered her lovers but also loves food and butter specifically, and it sounds very obscure, but it was actually a fantastic read. So I really recommend Butter, actually, and I've given it to my colleague in the office recently. She is enjoying that, but I have to be a little bit nerdy, also trying to future-proof myself. So I have been trying to research a bit of AI, and we actually have a Hong Kong author here called Kai, and he wrote a book called Raising AI, which actually a friend gave to me. And this isn't necessarily about, hey, learn AI. It's not that type of book, but I found it quite interesting because it's basically what he's trying to do. He used to be with Google and various other companies and involved in AI development, but he's trying to build a framework for how humans should interact with AI in the future. So the way he addresses it in this book is more like, these are our children, how we should raise AI, how we treat AI is, basically going to impact how AI is with us as humans. So I actually really recommend that because it's not so much, as I said, sort of day-to-day using AI and how to improve your efficiencies, but it's more big picture. What is the future for us as humans living alongside AI? So that's been quite interesting.
But that actually sounds like a really good mix. Certainly a little fiction and nonfiction never hurt. I do like to read a little fiction sprinkled in. Tabitha, this was fantastic. I love you sharing kind of your experiences on not only what you're doing at Cetus Maritime, but certainly all the great contribution that you and the entire team are doing at Captain's Table. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. And thank you for working the second year with the podcast as kind of being the one of the media sponsors.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I've really enjoyed myself. So thank you very much. I look forward to a long future partnership.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Take care.
Thank you.